Hey everyone, thanks so much for tuning in to another live stream episode of Dogman Encounters Radio. I really appreciate it. For tonight's show, we're going to welcome back a past guest. On episode 409, tonight's guest, Dwayne, came on and talked about an encounter he had back in 2012. The title of that episode is My Dogman Night Terrors. Without any further ado, we need to bring him in here so we can talk about the most recent encounter he had, which unfortunately happened this past January. Let's bring him in here now. Dwayne, thanks so much for coming back.
Hey Vic, how's it going? It's good to be back.
Well, it's great to have you, not for the reason that you're here, but yeah, I'm glad you let me know about what happened in January. And of course, thanks so much for coming back.
Yeah, absolutely. It's my pleasure.
Definitely. Dwayne, for the people who missed that episode, please tell us about yourself.
Well, I live in mid-Michigan, close to the Saginaw Bay area. 2012, I was spending a lot of time up in Alpena on a hay farm. We had lost our dad that year. So my brother and I just did a lot of hunting and had my first encounter out there. Said 2012. But so basically I'm a caregiver. I work in an assisted living and a memory care facility. I work a night shift now. It's easier for me to stay up at night. Still a lot of things that I deal with sometimes when I close my eyes, but just like to hunt and fish. After my encounter, though, in 2012, I stopped going out in the woods for a while. It wasn't until I think it was 2020 or 2021 when I actually went back out and started actually hunting again by myself. And yeah, just like to spend a lot of time outdoors. Grew up in the woods here in Michigan. A lot of time on the Asabo River. It's where we did a lot of trout steelhead fishing with our parents, and it's a lot of deer camps and trout steelhead camps. It was a pretty much fun life. Definitely can't complain.
Well, it wouldn't do any good anyway, would it?
No, not at all.
Yeah, it normally doesn't. If you started heading back into the woods to hunt and do other things in 2021, does that mean that you almost gotten back to the point where you're back to normal, or did you still have hangups?
Well, the first few times I went out, I kind of didn't want to go out alone. Unfortunately, I didn't have my brother to go out with anymore. Couple other people in my close circle had passed away from various things. So it was just at that point me and my wife. And needless to say, we never went very far into the woods. Actually, when I was hunting, I hunted over a open field. So I guess I kind of cheated there, but yeah, that's where it is with that.
Well, that is kind of, in a way, cheating, but at least you're getting back out there, and that's all that matters. I mean, in baby steps. But unfortunately, after January and what happened then, did that just knock you off the wagon and all of a sudden you're right back to square one? Or even though you had this encounter in January, are you still in somewhat of a good place without telling us about the details of this most recent encounter, of course?
It's not, it hasn't hindered me at all this year. Like, it's, I guess we all have a destiny, right? So, we don't really hear of people being attacked by these things, killed, whatever have you. So I guess I'm not too worried about that. But No, it hasn't hindered anything. I don't foresee it. I mean, what happened in 2012, that was a lot worse, I think. I don't think anything could get as bad as that for me. And, it took some years, but I still got back to it, and now I'm pretty much back to normal, I'd say.
Well, that's good. Yeah, and what happened to you in 2012, that was pretty intense, so I can understand you saying that. Do you feel like you're doomed in a way to have dogman encounters for the rest of your life, or do you think this second encounter was just a fluke?
So, I feel like, honestly, once you once you see something, and it really does not matter at all what it is. The human brain is hardwired to pick out things, right? We find pattern real easy in chaos. I think when you see something like this, whether it's a dogman, a Sasquatch, aliens, what have you, once you see it the first time, and it's such a life altering, a life changing event, you'll never forget that, right? So you're more keen to, all right, I know this feeling. I've been here before. So, now I know what to look for. And so I think that's what it is, if that makes any sense.
That does make sense. Anytime you can frame anything to do with these guys after having an encounter, it's a good thing. It kind of, in a way, helps you to make sense of all this whole dogma phenomenon. So, like I said, anytime you can do that, that's a good thing. How dangerous do you think dogmen are, Dwayne?
Well, they're an absolute top predator, and they've stayed hidden for so long. So, I feel personally that they are extremely dangerous. I feel like being around Dogman would be akin to maybe being in the ocean with a bloody leg. Yeah, I feel like they're pretty dangerous.
Well, it's easy to feel that way, but if you think about it, you've been in the woods who knows how many times around these guys, and you have yet to suffer a single scratch or hearing your head being harmed. So I can appreciate you feeling that way, but when it comes down to it, if they're nearly as dangerous as you think they are, then those facts wouldn't be facts.
Yeah, yeah, I guess you got a point there. That actually makes, complete sense.
Oh, sure it does. I'm never going to say these guys are safe to be around, though. Some people get that twisted. I'm never going to say dogmen are safe to be around, but I do believe in general they get a very bad rap for what they actually do. Yeah, there are dogmen out there that have killed people and others, many more who have hurt people. But as far as a general rule goes, no, they're clearly not wired to rip you apart as soon as the opportunity presents itself. Because if that was the case, I wouldn't have spoken with thousands upon thousands of eyewitnesses who were caught dead to rights, but allowed to leave. So, yeah, that just couldn't be the case. But having said that, let's get down to brass tacks now. If you don't mind, Dwayne, please tell us about the first encounter you had in 2012, because most of the people listening probably haven't heard that show or they forgot all the fine particulars of what happened when you had that encounter. And then after you carefully walk us through that first encounter, please tell us about this most recent one.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said a little bit ago, it was 2012. It was November opening. It was opening day rifle season, and my brother, he was working a hay farm. It was his fiance at the time. It was her family's hay farm. So I was up there. We had just lost my grandpa and my dad 35 days apart. So just kind of looking for an escape. Alpena is 2 hours north of here. So I went up there to his house and we were doing hay, and we cooked up a deal with a Amish homestead. We were going to supply them with some hay for the winter, and in turn, they would let us hunt a chunk of their property, which is butted to and or in the Huron-Manistee National Forest. So we drove, it's about I'd say about a 15 or so mile drive. And then it turns to a dirt road about 5-10 miles down the dirt road, turns into a 2-track. And then, if I'm not mistaken, it's about 10-15 miles down the 2-track. We were extremely far back. Like, we were deep in. So we got out and we split our ways. My brother's hunting 400 yards roughly behind me, and was using a 300 short mag. Just sitting up in my pine tree. I had a little window cut so I could like see right down to, my shooting lanes. And as I was sitting there, wasn't really nothing happening the first half of the day. And I started hearing what sounded like a herd of deer coming through. So I'm waiting, and I get my gun ready, and I get it up, and just kind of sitting waiting. And I start seeing deer come flashing, running in front of me. So I put my gun up, and I fixed my scope to where I was going to shoot at. And my plan was I was going to make like a bleat or some kind of noise and try and get one to stop. And if it was the biggest one, I'm going to take it. Well, I never got that chance. It just kept going and going and going. And it just like I said, I couldn't get him to stop. So I just kept watching. I heard something else coming through the woods. But I guess I should have said this, but about 2 or 3 minutes before the deer actually broke in front of me running through, it was like the loudest, like screech, howl noise it was just a terrible, god awful hearing or sound, I'm sorry. But so anyways, after the deer moved through, I'm still watching out it was the right corner, and I saw a big old giant gray wolf just come trotting along. I was like, no way. I put my gun down, just kind of watched for a second, and then I picked my gun back up. And I'm watching it through the scope. I absolutely love wolves. I mean, if we had spirit animals, I would be a wolf. If I could pick it, it would be a wolf. Well, we don't ever. Well, I guess I can't say ever, but we typically do not have gray wolves in the Lower Peninsula. And in episode 409, I believe I say that we don't get gray wolves down here. Well, there's been a few in the news recently. So I guess I kind of have to retract there because we are finding more in the Lower Peninsula. And anyway, so I'm watching it, and it just kind of was sniffing around a little bit, and it had put its ears back, called airplane ears. When dogs are sniffing onto something, they put their ears back, and it was sniffing up in the air, sniffing all around. And as I'm watching through the scope, this thing, it was just like stopped, and it had its head up, sniffing around, just kind of sniffing around like it was looking for me, looking for something. It knew I was there, and then it was like almost like it was looking right at me, and then it just stood right up. Just at that point, I completely froze. I didn't know what the heck to do. This thing, it once it stood up, it was like it knew right where I was at. It locked eyes with me, and it was the most frightening thing that I had ever seen in my whole entire life. Something I'll never ever forget. Uh, so once it stood up and I just kind of watched it for a second, it started to like walk around. Took a few steps to my left and kind of like paced around, almost like a semicircle, but not so much pronounced. And just kind of kept sniffing and sniffing, and it urinated like right at the base of my tree. It was the loudest, most disgusting smell, the most powerful thing. It's disgusting. I don't know if I mentioned that before, but it was something that you'll never forget. I mean, it's disgusting, but it's just one of those weird, you know what I mean? One of those weird things that you just sticks with you. Um, I didn't know what to do, so I fired around because I was scared. I thought I was I thought I was done. So I fired around and it didn't do nothing. I fired another one, another one, another one, another one. And like I said, I'm using a big gun. Like so, big gun, big boom, right? Well, eventually it just kind of went back down, took off, and my brother had come over the radio. We were using two ways, and just asked me what was going on. Asked me if I'd gotten anything. I told him no. I asked him if he had seen the gray wolf, and he said no. And I told him I had seen one. He said, "Oh no, not down here. It definitely just probably a big coyote, but definitely not a gray wolf." Well, no, it definitely was not a gray wolf because it stood up on its back legs. So we my brother, he come back over and he says, well, hunting's about done anyways. It's getting dark. Let's get out of here. I told him, no, let's just sit and wait it out a little bit. I didn't know where this thing went. I didn't know if there was more than one or what. I didn't want to move. I was dang near, I guess, I think the word is catatonic, right? When you're just frozen in place. But we ended up meeting up and walking out and meeting up. And once we got back to the car, got all our gear off and everything, got in the vehicle and turned around, started driving down the 2-track, head back out to the main road. And off to the right, about 10-15 yards into the thicket off the 2-track, we seen something. It was almost like it was like a light. It was just kind of like in place in the thick brush area. And once we got a little closer to it, well, not like to it, but more parallel to it, we could see it was somebody standing in the middle of this extremely thick brush area, a lot of low hanging trees, just nasty thorn. Somebody was just standing there in a cloaked, just something black, dark, dark, dark gray, brown. I don't know. It looked black. It was, pretty much dark out. In their hands, they were holding what appeared to be a coffee can, and I say that because this coffee can had a fire burning in it. And honestly, what else could you hold that would contain a fire like that other than a coffee can? So we just hurried up and boogied out of there. And the next day, we were gonna go back out hunting again, but decided not to go back to that spot. Well, I chose to hunt over the back 40 food plot back behind the farmhouse, and it butts up right to a wood. And I was sitting in the shack above the food plot, and there was a bunch of coyotes out and plot. They were just doing coyote things, and that same loud, piercing, screeching howl, I heard that again, and instantly my heart dropped. My hang downs hit the floor, and I'm thinking, no way, not again. So I started seeing movement in the tree line. So I fixed my scope. I'm like, man, I hope it's a deer, but there's a lot of coyotes in the field right now, so I highly doubt it. But I'm watching. There's something running, then all of a sudden, another one of those dang things bursted out of the tree line and just kind of stopped for a second, took off, running in the same direction. So if you were to take just a straight line from where I was sitting over the food plot and do about a 15-20 mile line, that would take you roughly to the same exact patch of woods as the night before. Well, back in back behind all the barns and everything like that, up on the edge of the wood line, directly behind the house, the barns and the stable, is where we put all our gut piles. The fish, small game, deer that we killed. We just, put all the guts out there, and then we could trap whatever. Well, we had seen massive prints around that gut pile. The thing is, it wasn't like there were 4 paws, as of if you could picture a wolf bent over eating something. Obviously, it has all 4 feet on the ground. It wasn't like that. It was just 2 sets. And it was pretty much just like all the organs and guts like that were all gone. The heads were left, the tails, eyes. And eventually, it was maybe 2 months later, my brother joined the military and never went back to Alpena. And I have never been back there since either. And yeah, like I said, it was November 2012. So that was the first encounter that I had.
No one should have to go through anything like that, anything approaching that kind of intensity. Well, yeah, like you said, please, when you're ready, transition into this most recent one now. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, so I was heading out to my uncle's house. He lives out in Saginaw County, which from my house to his is only about 20 miles. And It was there was like not a lot of snow on the ground, but it was a decent dusting, I guess you'd say. And once I got off the highway and I went through the roundabouts, I could just like feel like it's all right off the roundabouts. It's like industrial trucking companies on both sides, and they go down about a quarter of the way. This road is called Washington. So they go down about a quarter of the way down Washington, and they're on both sides of you, both sides of the road. And then it is pretty much open farm field on both sides. And once you broke through, like once I got past like them trucking companies, it just, I mean, the air just kind of got real thick. Like I mean, I could tell that something was up. I mean, it felt, it had that weird, distinct feeling. And so driving down the road, and I get up to my turn, and I turn right. The road is Tower Line. Okay, so turn on Tower Line, and it is all farm field until you get to railroad tracks, which are about, I want to say, a quarter to a third of a mile down, maybe. Off to the left, just on the opposite side of the railroad tracks, off to the left is like a mulch company. Um, Still to the right is all farm field. So at the railroad tracks, as I turn right on the Tower Line, um, I get maybe quarter of the distance to the railroad tracks, and my headlights to pick up a silhouette in the middle of the road. Well, more so to the right, more so in my lane, I guess. And we're just hunched over eating a turkey. And I only know that specifically because, well, I'll get to that. Anyways, once my headlights actually hit them, it instantly there was two sets, so four of the brightest amber color eyes, just right, like I said, pretty much right in front of me. So I slowed down real slow to a creep and pretty much stopped. And as I was watching them, I couldn't really make them out. Like I said, I mean, I kind of knew at that point, but I didn't want to really, I guess, jump to that, but I also didn't want to hit the gas and, you know, hope for the best. Well, as I started creeping up a little bit more, I had caught off to the right, out of my right peripheral. Um, I'd seen something jet right down like the railroad tracks, and at that point, the two sets of eyes that were in front of me, they also took off running. I guess I should have said this. I'm at this point now, because I had started creeping up again. I was about 20 yards maybe from the railroad tracks, 25 yards maybe. And I got up a little bit closer, and these things just like took off. They had pretty much just stood up and turned and headed off, which would be to my right. So they were facing me, so it would have been their left. And when I got all the way to the railroad tracks, I had my windows down because I was listening, because I knew what I seen. So I was listening, and I could hear like running down the railroad, running down the gravel of the railroad tracks. And all of a sudden, it was like an abrupt stop, like a skid. Like if you picture if you're riding your bike on gravel and you skid the tire and you slide, that's what it sounded like. Or if you slide your car on gravel. And no sooner did I hear that and I crossed the railroad tracks. I'm just creeping along. I'm doing like maybe 5 miles an hour watching out the passenger window. And all three of these things burst out of the railroad tracks. So between the railroad tracks and the farm field, the first farm field opposite the tracks, there's about, I don't know, maybe 10, 20 yards of, thick brush that's usually around country railroad tracks. And these things just bursted out of the frickin' railroad tracks through that brush into the farm field. And as they were running parallel to my vehicle, I'm watching them. There's all three of them were staring right at me. And then just no sooner did the little chunk of wooded area into the field, they were staring at me, and then they turned to the right and took back off. And just like that, they were out of sight. Not a single one of them had a tail, but the one that I knew, the one that I seen at this point out of my right peripheral, I knew at this point what it was, and I'd put two and two together because, hey, at first there's two of these things in front of me. Now all of a sudden there's three, and I seen this thing run this way. So that one was actually a little bit smaller, but it did have somewhat of a nubby tail. Not super long, but not real short either. If I had to guess, maybe, a foot long. But yeah, it was the most eerie, because at this point, I mean, there's three of them, and there was, for this one to take off out of my right peripheral, it, to me, it just means that as I was going slow and creeping up, this thing had to have been next to me at some point, and I had no idea. And that just, it just kind of really freaked me out. And I mean, there's really no other route to take. There's been a few encounters or sightings in the Zilwaukee, Saginaw area of Michigan, and the only other route that I could have taken to get me to my destination would have taken me right through the middle of all that, with the Saginaw River on one side and nothing but dark wooded swamp on the opposite side. So yeah, that was pretty much a reminder of what is really out there. And like I said earlier, I feel like once you see one the first time, see one the second time, the third time, you know what to look for. You know the feeling. So all of a sudden that just random, bush 120 yards away isn't really a random bush, you know. It's a odd feeling. It gives you the feeling almost like you're just being watched constantly. But, obviously it can't happen that way. I do believe these things are flesh and blood. So, with that being said, a grizzly bear is not going to track you down for your whole life and, make sure that you see it every 6 months, every 6 years, every 20 years. It don't work that way.
No, it
But,
doesn't. Thank goodness for that, too.
yeah, most definitely.
Oh, yeah. It makes it feel quite a bit different when you realize for the first time that you're not the apex predator out there in the woods, doesn't it?
Oh, for sure. I mean, our whole lives, you, me, everybody listening, you know, we're taught that in school growing up. Hey, we're the top of the food chain. You got nothing to worry about. Well, that that lends itself to a false sense of hope, I guess, if that's the right phrase. I'm real tired. I don't know if that's the right phrase, so please don't judge me if it's not.
Oh, no. Just like with me, I know it's been a long day for you, so no harm, no foul. Do you think dogmen know that they make eyewitnesses even more frightened when they stand up, Dwayne?
I do. I do. I think when it comes to that, they're extremely intelligent and they know what they're doing. Just like a grizzly bear or a Kodiak bear knows to stand up. And, you know, I think most definitely they do. They know what they're doing. It's all it's all part of it.
You're right. These guys, they definitely do know how to push our buttons. That's one of the unfortunate things about them, one of the many unfortunate things about them. They are experts at pushing our buttons and just playing us like a fiddle, unfortunately. Do you have nightmares about dogmen, Dwayne?
Yeah, yeah, I still do. So until after 2012, after that happened, I have one in particular that was happening all the time. I still have it, just not as frequently. It's usually just me. I'm walking through the woods and like an old cliche, creepy, spooky town, all abandoned brick and mortar, all just crumbled, and I can feel that I'm being followed. And once I get inside like this little town area, there's a little stone bridge over a creek, and I start getting like paced and then eventually chased by a dogman and or a werewolf, I guess, whatever is, in the dream and the nightmare at the time. And I run over the bridge and eventually just get cornered into, the corner of a little brick building, little brick hut. I run over the bridge and run up and try and, hide, but eventually get cornered by two of them and usually wake up right at the very last second. Like right before doomsday hits, I usually wake up.
Well, thank goodness you wake up. It's nothing worse than having a nightmare like that where you don't wake up. When you do have these nightmares, though, Dwayne, are they almost always about encounters that you haven't actually had? Or do you sometimes have nightmares about your actual encounters?
So I've only had one or two that were about my actual encounter, but nothing. I mean, everything pretty much after that has been just the wildest, most roller coaster sci-fi bullcrap that our brains could come up with.
I wondered about that. Most eyewitnesses, when they do have nightmares, their nightmares are about encounters that never did happen to them. It really makes you wonder what's behind that. Must be
Yeah,
really.
I've definitely had some real outlandish ones, man. Yeah, they get pretty wild.
Oh, I'll bet. Yeah, they normally do. Well, the first question for you is from Sonic Boom, and their question is, how tall were the dogmen?
So, are you asking about the first one in 2012? All of them? So the first one in 2012 I seen, I would have to honestly say, and obviously we don't have meter sticks out in the woods, and we don't usually carry them with us to, hey, let me check and see how tall you are. But no, all joking aside, I think they're about at least 7 feet, at least. So the one in 2012, the first one, she was about, and I say she because when it stood up, I seen no male genitalia at all. If you're a canine, you can clearly tell if it had a hang down. Um, she was about 4.5, 5 feet on all four when she walked in, and once it stood up, it was probably about 7.5 feet. And the first two in the road in January, those ones would probably, I'd say, about 7 feet as well. But the one that was ran off to my right, that one, like I said, was a little bit smaller. I think it's kind of why it caught my attention and stuck out a little bit. But it was a little, I'd say maybe it was about 6.5. But that one was actually real stocky, a lot more stocky than the other ones.
So that's a juvenile. 6, 7 feet, 8 feet tall. Yeah, that's pretty young for them then. It's not until you get up into the 9, 10, 11, 12 foot range that you get some maturity. Just something to keep in mind. I've got another question for you from Kevin Sampson, and Kev wants to know what color was the dog man. I'm not sure which one he was asking about.
Yeah, no. So the first one, like I said, she looked like a gray wolf. Um, these other ones though, they were a lot darker. Even the one that I seen the day after my very first encounter, the one that bursted out of the tree line into the food plot, that one was a bit darker as well. So I guess I've seen five total, two in 2012 and three this last time. And the last four were darker.
There you go. There's your answer. The next question, I'm going to twist a little bit to tailor it so that you can answer this. Jeremy Crick wants to know who would win in a fight, the dog man or a Kodiak? In your opinion, take the biggest dog man that you've seen, Dwayne, and please tell us, in your opinion, who you think would win such a fight, that dog man or a Kodiak?
Oh man, I would definitely have to say Dogman just because they seem so nimble and they can move around so stealthily, You would have to be an expert to be able to do something like that. Where a bear is just gonna be like Baloo from the Jungle Book.
Well, there are some Kodiaks out there that are far from being anything like Baloo, but yeah, like you said, I mean, the speed, and also I don't think a fairly good sized dogman gives up anything as far as strength to even a Kodiak. I think even a decent sized dogman is stronger than a Kodiak when you look at the feats they've done. Pushing on the sides of really big fifth wheel trailers, those things aren't light. Making them come up onto the wheels on one side, they do all sorts of other things too that just show clearly that these guys are ridiculously strong. So, yeah, I agree. I think I'd have to tip my hat towards the dogman side. I've got another question for you from Tim Egan. And Tim wants to know, can you describe this feeling of the air changed, the vibe changed? I knew something was up, sort of feeling.
Yeah, so I mean, if you've never just been in a bad situation before, it just kind of, I Unfortunately, I found myself in a lot of bad situations growing up, but you just kind of you get that feeling, you pick it up. The hair on the back of your neck kind of stands up, like, all right, something's not right here, but I'm not quite sure what it is, but I can feel it in the air. I, I guess it's hard to explain, but that would be the best way that I could do it to try and make sense.
Well, there are a lot of things about these guys and your emotions and feelings when you see these guys that are hard to frame. So I think you're doing a really good job of explaining all these things, though. The next question for you is from Tina Brooks, and Tina wants to know what feature about the Dogman scared you most.
The teeth, the teeth, but honestly, I guess even I guess I can't even say the teeth. It's the feeling, the sense of intelligence when they're looking at you. You can feel it in their eyes. You can see it. It's just like, you know, I guess it's not just like looking at another human, looking at them in the eyes. You know it's a human. You know they're intelligent, right? It's just a thing. We know we're intelligent. And when they have that look in their eyes, like, I know what I'm doing here. You know that you can't be here. You know you shouldn't be here. And it's just all everything is conveyed in them eyes, and they hold so much, and that that is the most frightening part. But after that, yeah, the teeth for sure, and the claws.
All those are good picks. Yeah, there's just something about those claws and teeth that when eyewitnesses have encounters are almost always the first thing that they think about, and understandably so. It looks to me like Tina's got another question for you. She wants to know, was the female as intimidating as the males?
Honestly, I'm gonna say no, because at first, yes, but there was just like a grace, a kind of gracefulness, I guess you'd say, about her. I don't know if all the other ones I seen were male or not, but the very first one, where I can almost guarantee that it was not a male. She just, yeah, she was scary at first, but once I kind of just got like locked into it, and that fright set in, and there was just some kind of graceful calmness about her. Like, I knew that intelligence, I knew that ferocity, that strength, that power was there. But it just kind of, yeah. I hope that explains. I hope that explains it. I'm sorry.
No, I think you did a good job of explaining. Normally, when eyewitnesses talk about their encounters and how they played out with male dogmen versus females, yeah, it does normally seem like the encounters with the females don't go as badly as the ones with the males normally will go. I'm not going to say that the ones with the females are always pleasant. I mean, look at episode 257 with Roy and what Herman went through. That was a female dog woman. So, yeah, I mean, it can go sideways with them as well. But like I said, normally the ones with the males are the ones that are the most frightening. I've got another question for you, Dwayne, from Tina. And this question is, what's your personal opinion as to the origin of these creatures?
Oh, like I mentioned earlier, I think they're flesh and blood. I think they've been here a whole heck of a lot longer than what we think. I mean, we know that sharks and sturgeon, just even freshwater sturgeon that are here in our little rivers, we know that those can be hundreds and hundreds of years old. Um, you know, Shark species have been around for millions of years. I think these things have just been here. And honestly, what I think it is I think over time, we had things that called dire wolves, and I mean, I don't know much about them. I know that they're just giant animals, but I think evolution had a hand in what dogmen are today.
Well, you might be right about that. It's hard to say for sure. I've got another one for you from Lynn, ALyn8105. She wants to know were the ears on the side or the top of its head. I'm not sure which one she's asking about.
No, for sure. All of them, the ears were pretty much right on top, right on that very top edge crest line of the skull there. Pretty much like any wolf or a German Shepherd.
There you go, Lynn. The next one is from Alexis Ayala. And Alexis's question is, I've heard good and bad encounters. Do you think dogmen have personalities like humans, like you have your mean one, a nice one, and one in the middle?
I don't think that they have like a social construct like that. I think they're just a wild animal, trying to stay hidden in an ever expanding world. So I don't think that they hold, levels like that.
Yeah, you're not normally going to find an overly friendly dog man. There have been encounters that took place where it's hard to describe. Encounters where the dog man, I guess as far as dogmen go, it was as friendly as possible. I guess that's kind of how you could explain it. But yeah, they're never going to come up and normally be overly friendly towards you. But then again, like Dwayne just said, when you consider how they have to live and what they are and all that, it would be really surprising to see them act that way. So that really shouldn't come as a surprise. I've got another question for you, Dwayne, from Kurt Schlichting. And Kurt's question is, when the first dogman urinated at your tree stand, did it urinate like a male dog or a female dog?
So it was pretty much, I couldn't really see particularly just from where it was. I mean, my tree stand, the base is not very big. I didn't have much room to, turn to my left and look, let alone did I. But it pretty much stayed up until it was done urinating and then went back down. And so I mean, I didn't see it cock its leg, I didn't see it squat. I seen it standing.
Yeah, I'd be pretty surprised if you told us that it cocked its leg or anything like that. But they're full of surprises. I guess you never really do know what a dogman's going to do from one moment to the next. The next question is from D Truth, and D wants to know what would have to happen in order for our government to admit dogmen existing. I'll answer that one for you. It's never going to happen. They might eventually admit to the existence of Sasquatch, but I don't see there ever being a time when they come out and say, hey, guess what? I just don't see that happening. If you think about the movie Jaws, where at the start of the movie, Chief Brody was talking, basically arguing with the mayor of that island where all this took place, supposedly, about putting the word out about them having a killer shark on their hands. Well, if you think about how the mayor responded, like he told Chief Brody, he said, I think it's wrong how he responded, but I can understand his logic by responding the way he did. If you'll remember, he told Chief Brody, now look, it's holiday season on the island here. it was summertime, summer break, and being a small island, tourism, that's basically how that island paid its bills. Well, he told Chief Brody, look, if you put the word out that there is a dangerous barracuda in the water, people will say, what? But if you put the word out that there's a killer shark, you're going to have a full panic on your hands. Well, yeah, if you let the word out that Sasquatch just might be in a woods near you, they probably are in a woods near you. That's one thing. That is going to shake people up, but nothing like if they get the word out and officially acknowledge the fact that, guess what, in a forest near you, there's every possibility that something that looks like a giant werewolf might be hanging out. If you let that cat out of the bag, then it's going to be pandemonium. It really is. So with that in mind and other reasons too that I haven't even gone into, I just don't see there ever being a time when the government's going to allow that to happen and let that cat out of the bag. I've got another question for you, Dwayne, from Tim Egan. And Tim wants to know, did you hear any sounds or smells during these encounters?
So the one in January, it was just, the rotten turkey. That's all I could really smell. I don't really have the best sinuses, so yeah, I didn't really catch a smell off the ones in January here.
Some dogmen emit a strong odor, others don't. Others can sneak right upon you without you knowing. The same way as Sasquatch do this all the time. I don't think that either Sasquatch or dogmen stink all the time. I think it's something they can switch on and switch off. Like gorillas, for example, have an apocrine gland or apocrine glands under their armpits, their oxters. That's a medical term for it. And yeah, they can emit that odor from that gland at will. And it would just make sense that with Sasquatch, with dogmen, they could do the same thing too, as opposed to stinking like that all the time. Because if they had that strong of a smell all the time, how in the world are they going to sneak up on deer? Another game. So if you think about it, it would only make sense. It really does. Now, this next question from Osriel Reloaded, that's one I'm going to take. He wants to know, do you think they could be cynocephali? There's been a lot of talk when it comes to dogmen about cynocephali, and when you consider that there are two main groups of dogmen, canine types with canid-style legs, and then you have type 3s that have hominid-style legs. Hominid-style legs with, knees and ankles the way we have, and Sasquatch have. The canid types, they have digitigrade-style legs, canid-style legs with hocks and stifle joints instead of ankles and knees. Well, cynocephali were reported to have hominid-style legs. So these dogmen that Dwayne's telling us about seeing, they couldn't be cynocephali because of that leg structure. Hope that answers your question. The next question is from Scott Baker, and Scott wants to know, how do dogmen deal with ticks, fleas, etc.? Any information? Scott, we have no idea on how they deal with things like that. Some people who seem to know a lot about Sasquatch, they think Sasquatch, they roll in water that's heavily laden with sulfur to repel ticks and other pests like that, but whether dogmen do that too, I don't know. I don't know if they drink a lot of water with sulfur in it to combat the tick problem and fleas. That's anyone's guess, so I can't answer that for you, unfortunately. The next question is from Tim Egan again, and Tim wants to know, have you sought any professional counseling after all this?
No, just from Mother Nature.
It's probably a good move not to try to seek counseling because, you can't tell them. If you tried to tell them what actually happened, you're probably going to be in a padded cell. So, yeah, not a good move. That's why I kind of tend to call it a prison with no walls for the people who don't know that there are people out here who specialize in this sort of thing, helping dogmen eyewitnesses. It's really a tough spot to be in when you have an experience like that you would definitely feel better about if you could talk with someone about it. But if you don't know who to contact, then it really is like a prison with no walls, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I mean, you've you alone have been very instrumental in, you know, helping me get back out and enjoy the woods again. You know, so you know, I honestly, I definitely want to thank you for that and all the people that you've helped. You know,
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, I wouldn't have it any other way. I feel so lucky. I just want to pinch myself to be in a position to be able to help. So, yeah, I feel lucky to be able to do this. I've got another question for you from Adolf Santa Steven. Hey, Adolf. Yeah, Adolf was actually a guest on the show I think about 4 or 5 months ago. He's a great guy. His question is, how long was its snout?
you know, honestly, I couldn't really tell. If I had to guess, I'd say maybe 5, 6 inches. But I was, you know, still pretty far away from them. I wasn't like right up on top of them to catch every single little ass detail. That wasn't little ASS detail, by the way. That was littlest detail. I'm sorry, but
You're fine.
yeah, no, yeah, I'm sorry. I can't answer that any clearer than maybe 5, 6 inches.
Well, you had so much going through your mind. You're doing good to know your own name, so you can't be faulted for that at all. This next question is from Mary, and it's more of a general question I'm going to take. Mary wants to know, I feel like the female dogmen mind speak more than male dogmen. Opinions? Yeah, it seems like there just might be something to that, Mary. It seems like if mind speak is reported, it's a lot more common amongst eyewitnesses who see females than males. So that's pretty astute of you to ask that. I'm impressed. The next question is another general question that I'm going to take from Chelsea Brotherson. And Chelsea wants to know, do you think some people are more predisposed to seeing cryptids? Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's called being a magnet. And for some reason, some people are. Some people just attract these things. And yeah, they just see these things, Sasquatch, dogmen, all the time almost, I guess you could say. And then I've got a comment here from Vanessa. She says, Vic, you skipped my question. Well, I apologize, Vanessa. Did you type it in all caps? Because I think I've nailed every single question that's been typed in all caps. If you could type it again for me in all caps, I'll be sure to see it now and be more than happy to ask it. All right, the next question would be from Lynn, ALyn8105. And this one's for me. It is, do you think the dogmen with ears on the sides of their heads are werewolves? A man turning into a werewolf. Well, Lynn, I don't believe in werewolves. I'm not going to say they can't exist because in this crazy world, you never really do know what can exist and what can't exist. But yeah, unfortunately, there are people on shows that care a lot more about lining their pockets than the truth, who are putting out fictitious stories about, you can tell a dog man this way from a dog, you can tell a werewolf by looking for this anatomical feature versus a dog man having this type of anatomical feature. I'd be very leery about listening to shows like that and taking quote unquote information like that serious, because a true operative of a government program that would have access to information on these guys, an operative like that is not going to come on any of these podcasts and reveal any of that information. It would be way too easy for the government to find out who's doing that, track them down, and it wouldn't go well for that person at all. So that is absolute bunk when you have a show that puts some charlatan out there who's claiming to be an actual operative of the government. Not going to happen at all. The next question, I guess I should answer that. I think when you see cases of dogmen being reported with ears on the sides of their head, in almost every case I can think of, it's always been the case of a type 3, a dogman with hominid-style legs, if the ears were on the sides of their heads. Perfect example, if you go back and listen to episode 4, let's see, what episode was that? Yeah, that was 4, episode 4 of the show. That aired over 8 years ago with Pam. Pam was a guest. She talked about that type 3 that she saw that night, and it had hominid style legs. Of course, it was a type 3, so naturally its legs are going to be hominid style with knees and ankles. But yeah, she reported seeing the ears being on the sides of its head. That's a perfect example. Also, too, if you do a Google search for the Beast of Seven Shoots, if you take a look at that photo carefully, you'll notice that its ears are on the sides of its head. And the Beast of Seven Shoots, it's also a type 3. It had hominid style legs. So yeah, when you hear about those ears being on the sides of their heads, that's in almost every case that I can think of, like I said, what you're dealing with. Let's find the next question. Going to ask one more here. It's been a long day, so I'm running on fumes. This last question is from Tina Brooks, and Tina wants to know, do you feel a certain responsibility to warn others to the presence of these animals? Asking you, Dwayne.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I reached out to Vic. We'll never get like Vic said, we'll never, ever, ever, ever get a for certain answer from our trusted elected officials. But it all comes down to us, to the public. If you see it, just tell somebody, the more people that know, we get the word out. Everybody knows what's out there. Be careful, be safe. These things are out there. Just, people just need to start telling people. Just tell anybody that'll listen. Tell the ones that won't listen, because the chances are they're going to repeat your story, and it might be in ridicule, but they're going to repeat it to somebody who is going to listen and who's going to take it serious. They'll repeat it, and then it'll branch out. And just the more people that know, the safer everybody can be and the more fun we can have.
Well, that's all very well said. And so that you know, Vanessa, I looked to see if you retyped that question, and it looks like you didn't. So I won't be able to answer that question or ask that question for you. But having said that, I can't thank you enough for coming back on to update us on this most recent encounter, Dwayne. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, no, not a problem at all.
I do. And for everyone listening, thank you so much for listening. I really do appreciate you supporting the show, and more importantly, supporting the eyewitnesses the way you do. Without you, you've got no idea how much you move the needle when it comes to these eyewitnesses coming to terms with their encounters. And I really can't thank you enough for that. I can't. It's definitely appreciated. Well, if you've had a Dogman encounter and would like to contact me and speak with me about it, it doesn't matter if you want to be a guest on the show or not. It's really easy to do that. Please go to dogmanencounters.com, submit a report, and if you do that, then I'll be in contact with you to get that conversation scheduled. But having said that, thanks again so much for listening to the show. I can't thank you enough, and have a great weekend. Good night.